Uncuckables.
Hello everyone and welcome to this special Saturday night edition of the Uncuckables. The reason we are on air tonight instead of our regular Thursday is because the XYZ conference was in the Uncuckables time slots throughout Monday to Friday and was on the Uncuckables channel until YouTube decided it didn't like some of the speeches, which is why the Uncuckables is now on the Unshackled channel. We'll be able to live stream our regular Thursday night show this coming Thursday, but the reason this is a Super Saturday show is because the Eden-Monaro by-election results, the votes are being counted now. It is 8:10 Sydney time, which means the polls have been closed for just over 2 hours now, so counting is well and truly underway. And now, since we are on the Unshackled's YouTube channel, you can directly send a super chat by pressing the $sign on YouTube. But if you're watching us on D Live, we've managed to get Entropy simulcasting the D Live stream. So I've put the Entropy link for those of you watching on D Live, so you can go there and send a super chat through Entropy. So I muted all the kids here so I could do my introduction in peace because I don't trust them. I'll just unmute David first, and then I'll unmute Stephen Wells, and then I'll unmute Matty, who's the noisiest of them all. You can all speak now.
Shut up, Tim.
I could speak. I could speak before Tim. Actually, I unmuted myself, but I just kept quiet because I'm a good little boy.
No, I'm the host of this Zoom meeting, so I can put you in mute, or I can put you in the sin bin.
Yes, but I can unmute myself from this end.
Should I start talking really close to my microphone so I'm really loud as well?
You're actually not that loud, Matty, than what you were on the air.
Well, I have no idea why that is.
Now, we did start a bit later than scheduled, but it's going to be, looks like a long night in terms of the Eden-Monaro by-election results. Now, it's a federal electorate seat in the South East of New South Wales. And I've got the map here. So it basically surrounds the Australian Capital Territory there. It's known as a bellwether seat because it goes normally with whoever wins government, but Labor has held it more than the Liberals lately with, well, it's a cliche in politics, their popular local member, Mike Kelly. I'll see if I can make that a bit bigger there. Yep, so it takes in the Bega Valley, takes in Cooma, and all these other places. They look like Aboriginal names, so I can't actually pronounce them, I'm afraid.
Nobody can pronounce them, Tim.
And people in the live chat have already noticed that Matty's door crack is back.
The wooden door, the famous wooden door.
The truth is, I'm on someone else's show, so I'm too lazy to set up my own background.
That's how it works.
Yeah,
when it's your show.
Yeah, when it's my show,
when it's your show, it looks pro. Yeah.
Yep. When it's someone else's show, I care a lot less.
Yeah, I have to admit, Dave, that I was a bit slack at times during the XYZ conference because it wasn't my stream or show. So that's why
I thought you did a great. You did a great job, Tim. All of you. Once again, thank you very much for all chipping in. It was magnificent, and I'm looking forward to making the next one even better.
Yeah, next year it'll be huge.
Next year? Yeah, just before Australia Day.
Is that you're going to do another one in January every 6 months?
Possibly, yeah. I'd love to do one in January, just before Australia Day. Just to poke the left in the eye.
Nah.
Incite some Cronulla riots or something.
Yeah. That's right. We're not saying that everybody should riot in the streets, but
now it is a Saturday night, so we are getting on the beers or the alcoholic beverages. I've got mine here.
I'm not drinking.
You've got your soy tea.
Mate, it's not soy either. It's real milk. It's chai tea.
Chai. I'm pretty sure chai is Chinese for soy.
Tastes pretty good.
I was thinking of that all night, man.
Yeah. Chai. It's chai. I don't think chai is soy, David.
So Zoom is holding up well tonight. It was extremely awful last night during Blair's Q&A. And it seemed to just, he got people to repeat their questions, but it always would cut out when they read.
The same point, yeah.
Yeah, which was
exactly
so
the same words, yeah. At least we could hear Blair last night. I mean, and he was, I really enjoyed both his speech and his answers yesterday. There were lots of insightful things in that, so yeah.
Well, we've got our first super chat for the night.
What is it? What's that?
On the Unshackled live chat.
Senator, can I read it out?
Yeah, you can read it.
Yes. Senator Slayer has set $7.99. Thank you so much, Senator Slayer, for sending $7.99 to the stream. He says, Crime Watch. Peter Grace had bondage material and nappies sent to his flat. Police are investigating. Peter Grace is blaming Dia Erickson and you, Tim.
Wow, that's quite... people are giving him free stuff.
I know. I would have thought a free set of nappies is exactly what he wanted.
Well, that'd be a very weird police investigation. Nothing's taken from you. Something's given to you.
Yeah, they're sending me presents, Your Honour. What are they doing?
People are more than welcome to send me whatever they want.
Nappies?
Oh, anything. People love free stuff, no matter what it is.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't know what you'd do with nappies, but you can whatever floats your boat. I guess, bro.
Oh, you're the one that raised it then. Now, Maddie, we should just make clear that you are not in one of the 9 Melbourne lockdown housing commissions that, because Dan Andrews announced that there were 108 new active cases today in the state of Victoria. There's going to be 2 more postcodes. They're going to be locked down tonight, but 9 housing commission towers are being locked down immediately as he was making the announcement around 4 p.m.
That's probably the first good thing Dictator Daniel has ever done, yeah?
What I will say is that we should actually turn the lockdown of the public sector housing, the public housing commission flats, we should make that permanent. We should turn them into open air prisons and stick bars up around all of them and then slowly deport everyone in there who lives in there, unless they're Australian, obviously.
Absolutely.
We should do that.
Doing that, like we could find other foreigners and send them to these open air prisons, yeah?
Yeah, and in a way to sort of sort them out, get them all in the one place in a sort of a camp where they're concentrated, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I would be careful, Maddie, because I mean, with that crack in the door behind you, you kind of look like you're living in a housing commission place. So yeah, be wary that they don't turn your house into one of these.
What are you saying about wooden doors? What are you trying to imply about wooden doors?
I was saying about cracks in wooden doors.
Cracks in wooden doors. Okay.
It's the sort of thing that I remember from looking at housing commission places.
Fair enough. I will say one thing. This is
Who was that? Who was that thing?
David. I'll say one thing, which we all have to say is that
I'm not saying anything. I don't know what you're talking about.
The outbreak, the current outbreak, or the rise in cases, has nothing to do with the wonderful equality-loving, amazing, totally not communist anti-whites of Black Lives Matter. Had nothing to do
Absolutely.
with it. Nothing at all.
Maddie, the most important thing about this coronavirus is that it doesn't get in the way of our commitment to diversity, because diversity is our strength, yes?
Definitely.
It's more like, what is it, diversity at the moment, because it's affected the diverse areas of the Northwest, this second wave or hotspots, whatever you want to call it, and the housing commissions that are in lockdown are in Kensington and Flemington, and a lot of people who went to the Milo Melbourne event in 2017 might be familiar with those housing commission towers.
Yeah, I know the ones.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that if they're not bombing you or bashing you, they're copping on you.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, have you ever seen that film? I think it's called Quarantine, where they quarantine a whole block of flats.
I haven't seen that one, no.
I think it's called Quarantine. It's one of those quarantine movies where there's like a zombie outbreak of genetically engineered rabies, and they all get trapped in this building with the rabies things, and it gets covered in plastic, and anyone who walks out gets shot.
Sounds like predictive programming again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about all the zombie movies that Devon Stack noticed, isn't it? That it's like they're programming, because the zombies are painted as inhuman, they're dehumanized. You're allowed to kill them, you're allowed to do all sorts of horrible things to them because they're already dead, they're not human.
Yeah,
and there's also the next level about the predictive programming is that when the riots started in America for the Black Lives Matter protesters, one of the major news channels, I think it was NBC or might have been CNN, they took the opening scene from one of the zombie movies and played it as if it was actually real footage of the city burning.
I've been doing exactly the same thing for the coronavirus stuff, so you know.
Well, yes, they did. So,
guys, I'm just having a look at the update. Sorry to hijack the thing.
Are you talking about which update on coronavirus figures or the votes?
On the votes.
Okay, I'll bring it up on the screen here. So this is from the Australian Electoral Commission.
He's quickly, I've got to do the job. I was going to say, I'm going to do Tim's job for him.
Yeah, can you go through the candidates? Because we actually have got a couple of the candidates joining us very soon.
Christy McBain. Fiona Kotvodge. What have we got? Kotvodge. What the name is actually?
Well, Matty, you got to announce what party they're from.
Sorry. Christy McBain is from the Labor Party. Fiona how do you put it? Kotvodge. Why do we have
the Australian Sex Workers Party?
No, it's a Saxon name there, isn't it? Kotvodge. Anyway, she's from the Liberal Party, so two women to start off with. Trevor Hicks from the Nationals, Kathy Griff from the Communists,
and the Greens.
Is that what I read it as communist every time these days? I don't know what you're talking about. Matthew Stadmiller from what's SFF?
Shooters, Fishers, and Farmers Party.
Yeah. Good. They've got a big swing towards them. It looks like.
Well,
Hemp Party. Michael Balderstone, Karen Porter from an Independent, James Jansen from the SCP, Joy Angel from the SAP, Dean McRae from the Libertarians, Ricardo Bossi from.
My mate Dean.
That's who we're talking about, isn't it? James Holgate, Independent, Matt Narelle Story, and Jason Potter.
Good work, Matty. Now read the votes.
Now read the votes. Well, McBain is on 36.3% of the vote so far. After she has nearly 15,000 votes, but that is a swing away from Labor of 4.2% so far, which is an interesting one, seeing as they held it by only 0.9% apparently in the last election. And Fiona Kay, I'll call her just Fiona Kay, because I'm not sure. Kotvodge.
Codvoss.
Okay, Kotvodge. It's spelled Kotvodges. It's actually spelled Kotvodges. Kotvodges. Cat badge.
Cat badge.
Where are we? Just degraded. Anyway, they're on 35.4% of the vote. And the Nationals are currently on 6.5% of the vote. So it does look like the Liberals are actually ahead at this point.
But they're actually counting the rural booths first.
The Greens. The Greens also have 6.3, but the Shooters, Fishers, and Farmers have 5.8. So you think their preferences would go mostly towards
the two-party preferred at the moment. So Kirsty McBain is on 50.7% of two-party preferred TPP, and Fiona Kotzvotz is on 49.29. But so that's real
close.
Yeah, but they're catching up with the two-party preferred vote. Only 61 of 86 booths counted. Well, because we've got. Oh, he was there for a moment. So we've got. We're trying to get on the candidate. Oh, one of the representatives for the Australian Federation Party. Their candidate is Jason Potter. So we're hoping to have the chairman of the party, Glenn O'Rourke, on. And later on, we're also going to be on the ground coverage and report from Dougal Cameron of Carnage House Productions, Joel Jamal, who is just a social media personality. His name recognition should filter through, and Ricardo Bossi, it says he's independent, but Australia One Party. He could only run as an independent because the Australia One Party is not registered. Do we want to have a look just before we try and bring Glenn in at the figures here for the COVID in Victoria? So as you can see, northwest still very red, but we're down near where I am, Frankston 1 case, Mornington Peninsula 0. So City of Hume, that takes in Broadmeadows and Sunbury, 89 active cases. Brimbank is 46. That's huge. Melton in the west, 16. Moonee Valley, 31. Moreland, 37. City of Melbourne, 29. Whittlesea, that's around near Epping and South Morang, that's 24. City of Wyndham, which is Werribee, Wyndham Vale, and what's the other one? Tarneet, that's 34. But look at the regional Victoria. The grey is good. That means no active cases there. Kieran Gilbert from Sky News said he'd heard a source that said all of Melbourne would be in lockdown tomorrow, but then he revised it after the Premier's office messaged him to say, no, that's not our advice.
Not our advice. That's not what we choose to do because it's already looking bad for us.
Yeah.
But I did see, because there's been a Twitter meltdown because it's a hard lockdown of these housing commissions. Nobody's allowed to leave at all because it's the lefties on Twitter have been saying because it's full of migrants and drug users that it's racist and discriminatory to lock them down. And so you should lock down.
Where's the lie? Where's the lie?
Yeah, you should lock down all of Melbourne Metro so it's not racist.
Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it?
All right, I'll try.
Can we just lock down the Premier and then we'll be done with it?
How about we just
I've heard all night, Steve.
we just deport everyone living in all those areas?
All right, I'll bring try and bring Glenn in here, so it's going to expand the. We tried to get him on at the beginning, but his audio wasn't working. Hello, Glenn.
Hello. I am here. How are you?
I'm good. We can hear you now. Welcome to the Uncuckables. I heard from a colleague in your party that you're interested in joining this somewhat crazy show.
Oh, absolutely. Look, it's been a pleasure to be invited, and that colleague was our vice chairman federally, and he's based in Victoria, out in the Gippsland, South Gippsland area. He's actually at Mibu North.
Now tell us about the Australian Federation Party, because for a lot of our audience, this would be the first time they've heard of it.
Yes, that's right. Look, the name started to become officially registered in February this year. What it is, I was the former federal chairman of the Australian Country Party, which originally started out way back in 2005 when the Country Alliance was first registered in regional Victoria. It had a long journey. I was in 2013 the interim national director of Bob Katter's Australian Party and the Senate candidate and leader of the party in South Australia. And as part of that process, after that 2013 election, the Victorian branch of the Katter's Australian Party ended up merging with the Country Alliance in Victoria and ultimately becoming the Australian Country Party down there in Victoria. Because of my involvement with the attempted expansion of Katter's party, I had a lot of success with building national networks, but not necessarily people wanting to take on the Queensland brand, which was understandable, but continued to negotiate and talk with lots of minor parties while I was working in the upper house in the South Australian government on the importance of starting to try and come together and build a larger grassroots broad-based party that tried to really work away from ideological, political, religious, and many other areas and divisions of the general public, and look at focusing on really uniting grassroots communities across those ideological and political lines, and actually focus on the issues and the challenges that the average person in the street, the average family, the average community was having, and unite the people along those lines, and focus on endorsing quality candidates that have values, integrities, morals, and honesty, and focus on building those communities, engaging those communities, listening to those communities, and ultimately representing those communities across the country. So the importance of having the right sort of candidates that aren't just interested in self-interest, and realise that it's all about uniting communities and listening to and representing those communities over a number of election cycles to ultimately start building a primary vote in excess of 30%, so that we could start winning lower house seats and breaking the back of the two-party system in this country, and start giving the governments of the country back to the people of the country. So there's a good quick overview.
So when you say giving the government back to the people, what do you want to do with that? Do you want to change immigration? Do you want to change the approach to like the climate cult? What's your economic policy?
Okay, David, instantly you're doing what is traditional in politics, whether it be minor parties and even a lot of the general public. You instantly jump up into the high end of political positioning, and playing the game that the media and the major parties want to be played, to divide the general public across divisive policies, rather than focusing on the local needs in the community, which will incorporate immigration, which will incorporate climate issues, will incorporate a whole range, social, gender, a whole range of those sorts of things. Now, while all those issues are important, they're big picture, they're high, and they're not the realities of what the average general public are talking about. And so you said, what are we focusing on? We're focusing on letting the people, and giving, what I mean by giving the governments back to the people is at the moment the only time that the political parties engage or even speak to the people is at election time to get their votes, and then once either side are voted in, they then just continue to do what they want, continue to do policies that aren't necessarily in the interest of Australia or Australians. And so while all the issues that you have mentioned, David, are important, and there are definitely different groups in the community that need to be heard and represented, the best way for any party to start breaking the back of the two-party system and giving governments of Australia back to the people is by...
So are you talking about getting the actual...
There's an echo with you, Dave.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah,
are you basically... They are on. Are you focusing on trying to get the politicians to actually represent their electorates in that case?
Our politicians, yes. It's
Yes,
never going to happen with your major parties. The bottom line is, it was originally going to be 5 to 7 years. We thought was a realistic target. COVID now, with so many people seeing so many different videos and theories and other bits and pieces, there's a much greater understanding in the general public in Australia that something's going on, rather than just going, nothing's going on and it's all conspiracy theory. So there's a much greater openness to what's really going on in people's minds. So at the end of the day, we believe now out of COVID, there's an opportunity of pulling that back to 3 to 5 years to ultimately break the back of the two-party system in this country and build a grassroots third and genuine alternative party that does not demand that their elected members vote on party lines, but actually demands that their candidates and their elected representatives represent the broad cross section of people in their communities, again across those lines, while not ignoring the different policies for minority groups or different areas. And of course, climate change has lifted up much greater than just minority group interest now. But the realities are there's two extremes. There's the alarmist and there's the denialist, whereas the truth is somewhere in the middle. And there's a
No, it's
lot
not.
of...
Sorry, but it's not. There is the truth.
Stephen,
There is a truth.
yeah, Stephen has written a book called Confessions of a Climate Denier. So
Yes. No, but what I'm talking about is if you get communities to start embracing what they can do in their local community to contribute to improving the environment, including taking on things that they can do for the climate and all the other sorts of things. It's a case of getting away from, again, dividing the community. Now, I would definitely enjoy reading your book, Stephen, and hopefully after the chat, I can get some links through to it. But I'm not. What I'm saying is that we will be taking a position that can be embraced by the majority of the people, rather than having Australian turn against Australian, and ultimately, the truth will come out as the momentum moves forward. Of the priority right now is to take the governments of Australia back to Australia, to not focus and point our fingers just at China. We need to literally pull all the international groups and organisations and countries together and say foreign, and on our side say sovereign. And we need to be rebuilding manufacturing. We need to be rebuilding jobs. We need to find ways of reducing the cost of living, the cost of electricity, access to jobs, and significantly rebuilding our manufacturing industries in Australia. Like one of the major projects that has the ability to completely reposition Australia back to the third or fourth largest steel manufacturer in the world is the Iron Boomerang project, which most Australians don't even know about. And it's a rail to link the iron ore fields in northwestern Australia to the coal fields in northeastern Queensland, and build two major iron manufacturing plants at both ends of the rail, and produce steel slabs there. And on the back of that, there's already plans and discussions behind the scenes with other major steel companies to build major rolling and pressing plants in Australia as well, so we can start manufacturing a lot of our own Australian produced steel slabs and create steel products in Australia. Now, obviously,
do you think we can reduce regulation on the electricity industry to make electricity cheaper? That'll actually give manufacturing a boost as well.
Oh, look, I think that is an absolute commitment that has to be made. Having looked at all of the different options available that are either being embraced in Australia or aren't yet allowed legally in Australia, one of the important baseload power options that needs to be investigated
Nuclear.
is actually the liquid salt thorium
power
generation. Yes. Now, a lot of the anti-nuclear movements will obviously jump up and down saying, oh, it's nuclear, no, we can't have it. But the realities are, anyone who can present a proper argument and get the nuclear name out of it, because there's fission and there's fusion. Leading up to World War II, and just prior to that, thorium was the number one focus for power generation around the world. But the key world governments shifted over to the current atomic power that was done because one reason only, and that was that it had the ability to weaponize the uranium and create nuclear weapons. The thorium process was not, it could not melt down and would not create the problems we've had with Fukushima, the problems in Russia with Chernobyl. If they were thorium generators, they would have just stopped working.
Okay, I do have a question sort of running. What's that echo? Is that you, David, or is that someone else?
It's not me.
Maybe, is it you, Stephen?
No.
Maybe it's you, mate.
Maybe try moving your microphone and see if it is.
Let's move my. I'll just be quiet.
Hey, do you know how to mute your microphone on Zoom? Try that.
Between talking.
So, there you go. That works. No more mic. There's no more echo now. Boomers. Anyway, okay, I got it. I have to run soon, so I want to ask as pointed a question as I possibly can. So
go for it.
You mentioned that you want to unite the Australian community, but I mean, when I say the Australian community, I mean actually Australian. I mean people of Anglo-British descent who were born in Australia of several generations. So I mean, my ancestry goes way back to the start of Australia. So I consider myself, well, I am Australian. Dave's Australian. Steve's a Pom, so we don't worry about him. But I'm all for uniting the Australian community. But right now, there is no political party that is actually in the back going to represent Australians specifically. Instead, we get a lot of politician talk about the community and the local community and all that kind of stuff. And that includes people who are not Australian. So it includes Chinese people, it includes African people. Now, I don't believe in there's such thing as a Chinese Australian. A Chinese Australian, in my mind, is just a Chinese, and an African Australian is just an African. Because I mean, there's more to nationality than just a piece of paper. So I just want to sit here. What's your party going to be doing in that regards? And are we just going to be getting another? Is it just another pro-multicultural, anti-white party giving us platitudes, or are you actually going to get people? Are you actually planning on representing the Australian people who are actually the Australian people, the people who are the blood of the people that created this country, who gave it the name of Australia, and actually fought for what we have today?
Okay. Now, I'm going to go slightly around Matty, because I'm not sure of the time limits that we have had, but on the basis of your outline...
Sorry, it's just me. It's just I have to go, so you can take your time.
That's all right. Okay. Where do you fit the Aboriginal people? Because I like to use the word Indigenous relating to myself, because I'm the fifth or sixth generation Australian, so I see myself as Indigenous to Australia. But the first Australians, or the Aboriginals, whichever name you wish to use with them, how do they fit into your description that you just gave? Because there was one key thing there that you used, and that was white. Yeah,
and okay, so with the Aborigines, I mean, I don't see the Aborigines as in terms of fitting into into the worldview that we express of nationalism. I don't see that as much of a problem, because there's only 500,000 of them, and it's not like we specifically. What I would do is just say, if you want your own territory, you can have your own territory. But if you want to live in our territory, you can. But we are going to operate our territory as specifically for the Australian people. So for the Aboriginals, because you can't deport them anywhere, it's like you can deport Africans, you can deport Chinese, you can't deport Aborigines. So for them, I would say, well, I would definitely give them the opportunity to set up their own ethnically homogenous independent state if they wanted to fight, if they wanted to earn it. But I would also say, all right, well, if there's going to be Aborigines living with us, then okay, that they can benefit from our pro-Australian ethnocentric policies. So I see the what about the Aboriginals question as simply a distraction. We can sort of it's one of those, we can cross that bridge when we get there. Aborigines aren't a threat to our existence. The flood of Indians, Asians, Africans, all these people are a threat to our existence. They're a threat to our country. They're a threat to everything that we hold dear. So we need to focus on the big threat. Aborigines, I'm not going to, I don't wish them any harm. Obviously, I don't want to hurt them in any way. But I mean, if we can resolve the other problems, we can come back to discussing the Aborigines.
Yeah, the only reason was that you were trying to define Australian on the basis, and I wanted to, of course, you hadn't mentioned them, whether you were going to incorporate them, or the Aborigines is what I'm talking about, into the definition of your Australia, or are they excluded on the basis that we can't get rid of them, but we've got to turn around and find a boundary and put around where we're going to move them?
What I would say is that Aborigines are not Australian people. They're not Australian people. They're Aboriginals. Like they are ethnically Aboriginal. I'm ethnically Australian. Now, in regards to the political solution between these two, between our two nations, because that's what they are. It's the Aboriginal nation, and then there's the Australian nation. A nation is a people. I can't go in too depth to it because Tim told me I'm not allowed to. Certain religious things that I'm not allowed to talk about. But anyway, I see a nation is a people. Aboriginals are their own nation. They are their own people. I believe that they should have. I want them to have their own ethnically homogenous independent state, which is just for them. Obviously, that's not, that's an ideal solution. Obviously, we can't just click our fingers and have that happen. But again, the main point from the question was that there are people advocating for Aboriginals, or at least pretending to. They don't actually, but they pretend to. But there's no one advocating for the Australian people. There's no one turning around and explicitly stating that Australian is an ethnic group. We are an ethnic group, and they are going to represent Australian people as an ethnic group because we have ethnic interests as well as the same as every other ethnic group.
Yes. So really what you're defining Australia, for your perspective on the question, is pretty much going back to the White Australia policy and working yourself around the Anglo-Saxon European core of the Australian settlement.
I call it the Australian policy, and it is the founding principle of our nation. So I think that you can't Australia that's not. I mean, I don't like the term white. I mean, I use it because it's convenient, but I don't use it. I don't like the term white because I like to think in ethnic groups. The Lord thinks in ethnic groups, so I think in ethnic groups. So that's the way I define it. But I mean, if you want to use the term white just to make it easier for yourself, that's fine. But Australia was founded specifically as an ethno-state for British people. Obviously, there were German people here already. So Anglo-Saxon Celt is the definition. Is the Anglo-Saxon Celt is the ethnic, like the sort of group of ethnics that I would put as Australian. So it's basically all British people and Germanic people as well, if they have enough Australian grandparents. So you can call it white, but Anglo-Saxon Celt works as well. I mean, unfortunately that we have Greek friends, but I don't consider Greek people to be Australian. Not first generation anyway. Third generation, yeah, sure, if they've bred in. But yeah, that for me, a nation is always going to be an ethnic group, because a nation is an ethnic group. So we have to think, and this is the way people naturally organise, and this is where we're seeing a lot of conflict in our society today, because we've got the Asian area, the Chinese areas, and then you've got the Indian areas, and then you've got the Muslim areas, which is like the Middle Eastern people, and we see a lot of conflict because of this. What was sold to us as a multicultural utopia, but they forgot to tell us that diversity plus proximity equals war. They forgot to tell us that. So I mean, what I would like to see is a political party or a political movement that would actually represent the interests of the Australian people. So I understand, as in the ethnic Australian people, but I understand how difficult that is. And every time someone actually stands up for us, they have the full power of the Zionists controlled state coming down on them, ruining their lives and slandering them in the media, and they get physically assaulted and all that kind of thing. So look, I mean, if you were going to actually represent,
only because I just thought I'd jump in there because I heard some of your this evening input about some of your religious things that you weren't allowed to speak to, and so we have similarities there. The understanding of the Zionist Jews as opposed to the traditional historic Jews. I'm aware of what's going on there, and I'm conscious of just not getting into too much detail. But the key thing is, one thing you said there was your Greeks that were second or third generation who are Australian citizens, they've been assimilated and they're in. When we start looking at Noe Hydro, there were significant Polish people that came in to work on that program, and there's now third and fourth generation Polish that have come and are now Australians. In the early days of the gold rush in Victoria and around the country, there was a significant amount of Chinese that pre the communism and everything else. There's significant numbers of Chinese and other nationalities that came in and are now third and fourth generation Australians. So that's why I'm just being careful because. So the thing is,
I wouldn't consider. Let's say a group of people have come in and they're Polish,
yes,
and a Polish person marries another Polish person, and then their children marries another Polish person, and then their child marries another Polish person. I would never consider those people to be Australian, not ever, because when I say assimilated, I mean a Polish person. Let's say a Polish couple comes here and they have a Polish kid, and then their Polish kid marries an Australian, and then their kid marries an Australian. Then that would be Australian because they've actually integrated into our ethnic group. But if it's just if they're still ethnically Polish, then they are still Polish. Just as if someone's still ethnically Chinese, they are Chinese. Or if if a Chinese person marries an Australian, their children would be half Australian. So I would actually go so far as to say that these people can never actually get an Australian citizenship until the third generation of children. That's what the Bible says should happen for citizens. So they should take 3-4 generations before they breed in and become citizens. So I mean,
Maddie, my kid will be an Australian then.
What's your wife's Aussie, isn't she?
Yeah, my wife's Aussie.
Yeah, and what are you? You're Aussie, aren't you?
I'm born a Kiwi.
You were born a Kiwi. Oh.
I've lived in New Zealand for 5 years.
I'll tell you what. We'll call your kid Australian because New Zealanders are close enough anyway. But if you were English, then I would say your kid was still English.
I banned Matty from
the English,
thumping the Bible tonight, but he's.
I tried not to.
Yeah, but you're just thumping
nationalism. We're talking about nationalism.
Yeah. Well, I think if you're gonna have a standard, is that the biblical definition of a nation?
We'd have to talk about it another time.
Yeah,
we'd have to talk about this another time. If you want to ask, I'll do my own stream on it.
Yeah,
because it is interesting to understand the biblical definition of.
No, we're not getting into that. No,
sorry.
We've been banned. I've been banned.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
I'll start another argument.
Yeah.
So can you let Glenn respond, please?
I've encouraged some of this banter.
Bad idea.
Yeah, bad idea, but it's important because obviously you've got viewers out there and you're clearly wanting to identify where the Australian Federation Party stands. So I can assure you, Matty, we are not going to fully meet your requirements. But my thing is that when we look at a broad community, there are, under your definitions, Australians and other nationalities in that community. Majority are going to be Australian citizens. The majority are going to have assimilated but not meet your requirement of Australian citizens, but they are integral and important contributors to that community. And there will be some other ethnics and non-Australians or just permanent residents that are in that community. Let's take a normal suburb or something like that. Now, what we look at and what I was stating is uniting and representing an electorate and a community. So we're looking at building our branches and our focuses at the state and territory level across the country. And the goal is then within those electorates, there are going to be towns and different communities in there, but we're focusing on Australians, but not excluding the other group, but we're focusing predominantly on Australian citizens, regardless of their ethnic background, but focusing on policies that affect them in that state community, and the best example is using the current Eden-Monaro by-election. Now, firstly, to say, don't look at the votes that we've got because we decided to run a candidate the day before nominations closed. There'd been no pre-work. The party has never lifted itself up into the public eye up until now, but the candidate is the leader of our party in the ACT, and the ACT elections are coming up in October. So there was an opportunity to use the media in Queanbeyan, which is the same media for Canberra, to start lifting the party brand and Jason's brand up to then move on. Now, we took two policies after speaking to the people in the communities to the election. And, you know, we gave some support in the questionnaires and the other things in the paper. But the two policies, the first and foremost, was the Eden to Canberra rail project, which is a major, there's lots of feasibility work being done. It's proved that it can happen and provide access to the natural deep water port of Eden. Now, by rebuilding that line, increase the opportunities for jobs, for input, growth of business and industry, growth of the Port of Eden. So right across the whole electorate, every single town, every single community would benefit and gain directly and indirectly by that project. So there was absolutely nothing or no one that was against it. And we put a call out and we got 9 of the 14 candidates to publicly come out and support the project as well. So again, we were even looking at developing unity across the candidates. Now, this was all a demonstration of how we are going to progress in growing the party and representing the people. It was a starting point. Our second policy was about mental health out of the back of floods and COVID-19, again across the region, but even with some
And
of the...
what was that? What was the mental health policy? How are we going to implement that?
Yeah, it was a call for an expansion of the Medicare rebate or supports for mental health. At the moment, it's limited to psychiatrists and psychologists. The psychiatrists are upwards to $350. Psychologists was sort of $150 to $250, and the rebate was about $80. So all we were calling was that it be expanded to incorporate qualified counsellors with a certain limit of experience and psychotherapists, so who would both charge a lower rate, so we could reduce the actual gap required to be paid by the people, so that because so many people are not.
Don't you reckon like mental health treatment is like made redundant now with the internet, and that people could access YouTube videos and podcasts and books and shit?
That's not real mental health treatment. That's
there's community and stuff, man. Like I swear to God, it's all fake, Tim. Like this mental health shit is just a lot of medicine and all this stuff is just bullshit.
Dusty is right there. Like we actually don't need psychologists. Basically, if people worked out and got exercise. 99.9%
community, man. Like family and community is probably the answer to a lot.
Yeah.
All right.
And so that's
guys,
fine.
Sorry for interrupting you there, Glenn. But I do have to go. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for answering questions. I will say that I don't believe that there is a democratic solution at all. But good luck to you. If you think you can solve, if you think you can do it, then good luck to you.
That's fine.
I've lost complete faith in the democratic system. I think multiculturalism has destroyed it, and it was doomed from the start. But anyway, you guys, good luck with your future campaigns and all that kind of thing. I'll see you around. David, don't forget to join us on XYZ Live on Monday at 9, and I'm going to do my own stream tomorrow from 8:30 on Matty Rose Live. And don't let Tim bully you guys while I'm not here.
See you Monday, Matty.
See ya.
See you, Matty.
Cheers, Matty. Oh, thank God Matty's gone now. I'll bully him while he's not here.
Mind you, I will let you know I didn't feel bullied.
Matty and I, we just irritate each other. Dusty, I think there's an echo on your end.
Is it?
As well, yeah.
No shit. I don't know how. I'm running it through my phone
Glenn,
tonight.
We'll have you on for another 10 minutes. Then we've got another candidate coming on, Ricardo Bossi, the independent.
Oh, wonderful. Yes, Ricardo is a great man. Now, our actual candidate is actually Jason Potter for the party. I'm actually the federal chairman of the whole party across the nation. So So that was why I was able to really talk a lot more in detail about the whole long-term plan to ultimately form balance of power across governments across the nation within the next 3 to 5 years and break the back of the two-party system, which is how you can hand government back to the people, where the people have got the greatest say on what the final decisions are in state, territory and federal governments in the not too distant future, because at the end of the day, they only, as I said, they only come to the people at election time to give one side or the other the permission to do what they want.
Yep, so anyone else got one last question for Glenn?
Grow a fucking mad mustache, mate.
Yes.
Bang. And just rock that shit like Jesse Ventura. Just bang. Chin out, mustache. People will vote for you.
Yep. No, I'm not looking for votes. I'm looking for building a grassroots party right across the nation so that people can realise that their votes do count, re-empowering the people, letting them stand up and really calling a new grassroots revolution to take Australia back, to fight all of the foreign ownership, influence and other things.
Now
Sovereignty.
Now say that with a mustache. Bang.
Before you do go, Glenn, we'll just go through the final vote tally, or as it is at the moment.
At the moment,
yep.
Yes.
We'll do a final take before you go. That's
no
what
worries. Now, I think I would expect that we would probably be coming last because we never really did much of a grassroots campaign. It was mainly social media and media releases.
All right, so we have at the moment with 71 of 86 polling places returned, which does it give an indication of how many percentage of the vote is counted? No, it doesn't. But
no, I have here. I can even give you the numbers if you want, because I have the AEC polling. Well, I did have it. It's gone.
Yeah, I've got this as well.
Yep. Yeah, the AEC one is the best to look at. It's got the actual numbers there as well.
Yeah.
The percentage should.
I find them because they're in lockdown.
Well, they've got they've promised the Electoral Commission to have COVID-safe voting and counting and scrutineering, which is just sort of sounds like buzzwords to me rather than do they have special counting gloves on? Have you heard anything from the ground there about how it's COVID safe?
Oh, look,
not taking place in Victoria.
Who's speaking there? All I've heard in recent times, the reason that the pre-poll and postal and the bigger polling booths are taking longer is because of the challenges with the separation. Of course, when there's a question that a vote is informal, that's when the fighting starts. And it's hard to fight over it. They've got to pass it around, and rather the old days, everyone would just lean over it, and whoever could get, the best noise. Scrutineering is a fun thing, and there's a lot of fraud and things that goes on in the scrutineering process, and it's harder to get everyone quickly to make decisions on electoral or voting forms. So that's one of the biggest challenges. But if you wanted me, if you've got the tally room, it does have the votes and the percentages.
Yeah, I've got that here. But I don't think there's actually been an update since we looked at the beginning of the show. It's still shooters and fishers. They're on around about 5.8. Science Party 1.26. Marijuana Party 3%. Independent James Holgate. Do you know where he stands?
He ultimately is a lefty.
Okay.
But he's more of a centre left than he is a full lefty. But so he's on 2.67 at the moment. Obviously, Trevor Hicks from the Nationals, he came and supported at the media conference at Queanbeyan Station the Eden to Canberra Rail, which then continues on to the inland rail. So there's huge opportunities for that region. Then you've got Liberal Democrats, Dean. Obviously, he's a good man. He's more of a libertarian, so supports a lot of the things that we do and the people, but obviously has more of the left wing of the Liberal Party's sort of philosophies of the libertarians, which is where they ultimately got the Liberal name from. And it's more a case of small government and let everyone do whatever they want to a certain degree. Joy Angel.
Personal responsibility.
Yeah, that's right. So Joy Angel, Sustainable Australia Party, obviously their big push is sustainable development, and underlying is reduced population, remove immigration. We know the Labor.
Yep.
Ricardo Bossi that you're about to have on, wonderful man, has a beautiful heart, and wears his heart on his sleeve, and sometimes that not necessarily great in politics, but he's worked very, very hard, and he's spent a lot of time in the electorate, and as much as the vote is small, I think for the work he's done, I think he's definitely been rewarded. Karen Porter, definitely a lefty. Kathy,
who's doing the talking?
Glenn O'Rourke, the federal chairman of the Australian Federation Party. Kathy Griff, being a councillor in with the Labor member, obviously a Green. Narelle Story from the Christian Democratic Party. Obviously, we know the history of the CDP. And Jason Potter is ours. And, a smaller vote, but the goal was to lift the party and Jason's profile up in Canberra through this campaign. So yeah, there you go.
We won't know, I think, until later this evening, because it seems to have been frozen now, the count at the moment. But thanks for joining us tonight, Glenn, and letting us know a bit more about...
The count's frozen. They're trying to restack the dodgy votes.
Right. Yes, that's right.
AC.
Yes, I'm not sure. Oh, there we go. I couldn't find... There we go. I'm back.
Well,
hi, Ricardo. Good to see you.
Oh, I didn't realise I was on. I thought that was a private comment of the guys.
No,
yes, the AC is not the least bit corrupt. It's a reputable organisation that never gets it wrong, except according to a few books that were written over the last 2 decades. But other than that, they're good people.
Oh, the AEC are. It's just the people that work for them. Dear. Yeah, so,
Dr. Amy McGrath wrote a couple of books on that, and the Australian National Audit Office has some recommendations that the AC has strangely failed to implement over the last 5-6 years. But again, not suggesting anything.
Yes, and I'm sure that our friend Lex, that we're both friends of, you've heard a lot of his little stories and things as well. So there's a lot of actual historical fact in the background as well.
That's correct.
Vote fraud and a whole range of things. So I'm happy to just stay quiet, Tim. Am I allowed to stay on? Because I hope Ricardo has, even though he wasn't always in the room, was able to listen in as we were going forward with our discussions as well. But I'd love to just listen in and be part of your group quietly.
Yeah, well, he's going to be the center of attention for the next little while there. Well, it's not just him there, but the ginger nut next to him. That's also the Arnott's biscuit. We're wondering if Arnott's will change the name of Ginger Nuts to cool your sensibilities, Dougal Cameron of Carnage House Productions.
Well, look, I don't want to say anything that's going to get me in trouble, but there's going to be one Ginger Nuts that's more famous than Arnott's. I'm telling you that much.
And we've got, is he going to come in front of the camera shortly? Joel Jamal.
Look, I'm hoping he does. He said he wants to be behind the camera a little bit, but if you can convince him later on, he might make a short little appearance. But to be honest, I think the main story is going to be the big gorilla of a man next to me. So I think we should let him talk for a minute.
Oh, yeah, that's another word I don't think you're allowed to say now.
Look, if he's white, I think it's okay.
Yeah. Look, just because my arms are longer than my legs, please, don't be too cruel to me. I'm a sensitive young man.
We do have a super chat that has been in the doc for a while. The rest of you seen it?
Port
No,
film
not.
Yeah,
I can't see it.
it's an insult towards me, so I'm not going to read it. Someone else can.
That's $5. Then you should be doing a bloody skull and a beer, mate.
Oh, well, I've got what is that? The raspberry lemonade vodkas here. So let me just
Dang.
pull myself
Have a crack,
one.
mate.
All right, we'll read it out.
Tim Wilms is anti-Christian. Censoring Christianity on a nationalist show is cucked. There you go.
You go and gets the whole reason for the show.
Well, didn't he get enough Bible Port Film Co-op on your and Maddie's Bible stream Thirsty Thursday?
Yeah, we went hard out.
Yeah. I mean, he's getting his Bible fix with Maddie's Bible stream, your potty mouth version of Christianity as well.
Swearing for Jesus.
Oh, the real version of Christianity, Tim. Don't bloody downgrade it like that, mate.
How many fucks are in the Bible?
Well, when they write the updated version, Dusty Bogan will be in there, and there'll be plenty of fucks. I'm telling ya.
It's every and Abraham knew so and so will be changed to Abraham fucked so and so.
That's the way that Bogan interprets it. You know what I mean?
Now look, Tim, I don't want
And he
to
begat.
cutting off this conversation. I do love the inputs we're getting, and I'm having a great time. The only issue is I'm conscious of we've got the kind of A1 party upstairs, and Ricardo's kind of the star of the show.
Yes.
And I don't know how much of his time we can take out at the minute.
Well, this is, as one of the entropy questions was, does this circus ever stop? No, it doesn't. Well, we did on an Uncuckables episode, Ricardo, when the Australia One party launch played your launch video. I think Dave was on the panel, so was Richard Wollstonecroft and Dia Beltran. You're on the name as an independent for this by-election because Australia One is not registered yet. So I'll start with how close is that?
Thanks, Tim. No, very close. We were rolling along quite well until the Eden-Monaro election was called. So obviously the process stopped there. The policy position is now being refined. The last iteration for the time being is ready to go, but we haven't had a chance to review it and agree to it formally. That's going to be up. The Constitution needs to be just ticked off by the lawyers. And the reason the Constitution's taken so long is it has to be something that the members can see exactly how it's run, because this is going to be a very democratic organisation. But having said that, we know that the Greens and other trolls and spies will try to get in and infiltrate. The white ants will try to get in. So we're going to make it as bulletproof as possible, whilst maintaining as much democratic control by the members as possible as well. So a short answer to a short question, we're hoping maybe 2-3 months max we'll be able to start calling for members. Once we get the required 500 members on our books, the clock starts. We hold those 500 members for 12 months. Demonstrating to the AEC that we are a serious party we've met all the requirements. Then we get the tick as a party. That doesn't mean we don't do anything for the next 12 months. We'll be continuing to move forward. We've got the state election in Queensland coming up on the 31st of October, and we are planning on having some people run as independents there, and we will back them up as well. So the battle continues. Just because Eden-Monaro is finished today, we'll take a breather tomorrow. We'll go back home again. And then we start on Monday, because we've had volunteers drive down from Queensland. The whole family, mum, dad, and the kids came down to hand out how to vote cards. They went as far south as Eden, as far north as Yass in the electorate. Now they're in Queanbeyan today handing out how to vote cards. We had some Victorians drive 7 hours, a group of them, to get to Eden and Merimbula in the southeast corner of the electorate to help out. So everyone shoots back home. We regroup, and then we get the party going. But we're going to remain active. We have hundreds and hundreds of more supporters. We can't call them members yet, but we have hundreds and hundreds more supporters now as a result of this little foray into Eden-Monaro. So regardless of the technical outcome, this has been a massive win for us. We've got brand recognition. We've got policy recognition. We certainly got name recognition with me as the leader, which is very helpful. And the best nugget from this election is this, and our scrutineers all came back with the same story. The voters, by and large, are not following the how to votes. And we know this for a fact because the majors put me at 14, nationals put me at 13, shooters put me at 12, I think. So I'm the least popular man in this electorate, and yet the voters, and we started with from a zero base with a tiny handful of volunteers that grew slowly as we went, and virtually no budget. It was all coming out of our own pockets until we got some very generous donations from members, supporters. The preference flow is very interesting because they saw my name at the 2, 3, 4, and 5 mark, where it should have been at the 14 mark. So that's a good little piece of news for next time. All the punters need to see is they need to see a little bit more of us, get a better understanding of what we stand for, and we're going to start smashing the majors, as Donald Trump might say, bigly.
So, Ricardo, why do you think you're so unpopular with the other parties, but more popular with the ordinary people?
I think the question answers itself. I bumped into Senator Jim Molan at the Cooma pre-poll, and I've known Jim for a long time, and we've worked together, so there's no animosity there at all. But he said to me quite kindly, he said, "Oh, Rick, you know, it was hard putting you at number 14." And I said, "Jim, no, it wasn't." And he agreed, "No, it wasn't. You've been smashing us on social media." And I have. And I got asked, do I preference Liberal or Labor? And I said, neither. I want to burn both to the ground. That's pretty straightforward. Mm-hmm. And it's not just a throwaway line. The reason they hate me is because I'm going to destroy their little cabal. It's a two-party preferred system. Nobody gets a look in. And we're going to pull that apart because it's quite interestingly, it's just not fair for the voters, for starters. And it's also unconstitutional because Chapter 1, Section 3 of the Constitution says the voters should direct their members directly, elect them directly. But the party puts a filter, which is unconstitutional. I'm not going to fight that. That's just a nice little technicality. But what they like about me is I talk straight. I don't prevaricate. I've got a position. I tell the truth. I stick to the truth. And I've been raising two very unpleasant issues that both parties need to be hung, drawn and quartered for. And that's the VIP pedophile ring that John Howard's Liberal government placed a 90-year suppression order on. So we got VIP pedophiles, including a former Prime Minister, judges, and the rest, that the Parliament, and that's Liberal, Labor, Nationals and Greens, will not tell the Australian people about. They're happy to sit there quietly. Now, here's a question for you. You ring up your local MP and ask him, will he move to lift the suppression order or not? Now, what do you think that's doing to the elite, the status quo? They're terrified because the whole house comes tumbling down. Because the reason they all stay in power is they all got dirt on each other. They never really call each other out. They just protect each other because it's a game. It's a shell game. You get in this time, I'll get in next time. They all look after each other. But we're about to destroy that because we don't quit and we don't think this is a joke. Politics is a grim business. This is serious. There's nothing more serious. And you can see the impact of this corrupted parliaments around the country moving beyond their constitutional limits. Everything that Dan, the man in Victoria, is doing is unconstitutional. Everybody knows it. And yet you've got Scott Morrison up here blowing smoke up his skirt. Give me a break. We're not stupid. It's wrong. It's illegal. And it's just stupid, illogical. You don't quarantine the healthy. You don't quarantine a suburb. Give me a break. Please. This is wrong. The people know it and they're starting to push back. Australians are pretty relaxed. We'll take a hit for the team if we have to because, you know, let's give everybody a fair go. But you push Australians too hard and they're going to push back bloody hard. And they're now getting to that point. And we know that the Socialist Republic of Victoria is the vanguard for all the socialist plans that they have for us. And if they can do it in Vic, they'll move it into New South Wales and everywhere else. Well, no, that's about to be turned around. Now, this is going to take some time, but believe you me, the Liberal, Labor, Nationals and Greens will cease to exist as forces for anything in the next few election cycles because the people are going to tell them to go to hell, and they deserve to go to hell.
So, Ricardo, so are you saying that the two main things that separate you from the other parties are you're actually prepared to call out basically the pedophiles who are running not just our nation but the nations of the West as well, and basically the sort of tyranny that we're seeing from governments all across the West, and particularly here in Victoria, with regards to the coronavirus? Or do you think there are more positions that your party takes which separate you? So you know where I'm coming from. I'm asking a leading question here. What's your position on immigration, and do you think that has an effect as well?
Of course it does. But let's go back to the pedophile thing. That's the tip of a very ugly iceberg, and it is international. We know that. We know what's going on in the US. It'll be revealed over time. We'll start to see exactly what's happening over there. Australian people will be shocked. But that's just, as I said, the tip. They are degrading this nation at every possible level. Let me take you to another one: full-term abortion. And I get beaten up for this. This is amazing. It never ceases to thrill me that I just tell the truth, and people get angry at me for doing so. And I say, look, I'm just a piano player. Don't shoot me. But they'd rather shake their head and pretend it doesn't happen. But Gladys Berejiklian, good for nothing Gladys, introduced full-term abortion just after the last election. She snuck it through. Now, full-term abortion, and we get the grey-haired 70-year-olds who fought for this in the 60s and 70s, and I've never met a more callous group of individuals. There's one thing if a young girl gets herself in trouble, after a night of drunken passion, but it's another thing to cut a living baby out of a woman at full term, minutes from birth, kill it, not give it a burial, not give it a birth certificate, and this is what good for nothing Gladys did. She prevented she allowed the sale of the body parts because it's classified as medical waste. Now we know from international experience that an early aborted baby is worth $50,000 on the market. A full-term aborted baby is worth $500,000. They're buying Ferraris on the deaths of kids. Now, look, I don't give a rat's ass about what other economic policies you've got. If we have a nation that kills babies, and Scott Morrison knows it, and Albanese knows it, and that dope that runs the National knows it, and the guy in Victoria banned that thinks that sexting kids is a good thing, he knows it, and no one's saying a word. So why do you think they're scared of me? Because I'm calling out the soulless crap that is destroying this nation. And that's just on moral issues. You want to talk about that heartless bastard Morrison? He's putting nearly $250,000 fine on people who import vaping products. Well,
these suckers right here. That fine was coming from me. Send it in the mail, Scott.
Right. So here we go. We've got mentally disabled people that smoke like trains because it gives them relief. And I smoked for 30 years, right? And so he puts this in, he slips it in at no notice, and now you've got these poor people on their disability support pensions. They spend all their money on overtaxed cigarettes. It's going to give them emphysema and lung cancer. But the jerks in Canberra don't care. So I can give you a chapter and verse. Why do they hate me? Because the game's up. They're done. They're busted. Everything they touch turns to crap. That's it. We can just keep going all bloody night. If the people of Australia knew what Morrison and Albanese and the other two parties were up to, they'd be up here with torches and pitchforks.
And what's your immigration policy then?
The immigration is easy. The centre of a nation of its culture. That's it. It's its culture. I don't care whether you're black, white or brindle. I couldn't give a rat's. It makes no difference. It's only the Labor left Greens that have this obsession with skin colour. The rest of us don't. Put me in the sun for more than a week, I'm blacker than Ace of Spades. But I can tell you this.
Don't you think culture is race, essentially? Like a culture.
No, you break it. No, please, no.
But
break it down into constituent.
Yes,
break it down into.
Culture is basically it comes from your race. Like you don't have Africans making European culture. You don't have Europeans making African culture.
What's at the center of culture?
Our culture.
What's at the center of culture? What's the constituent part? Because you've got culture is informed by geography. Because if you've got water, that informs your culture. If you don't have water, it informs your culture. So there's geography as part number one. Then you've got language, because language informs your brain. Literally the neural nets, and that's why you've got certain languages which are so blunt and monolithic almost. The culture reflects that lack of subtlety. We have a language, English, for example, And this is just, I haven't got to the heart of culture yet, but you got to,
Yeah,
maybe
you
you're
can't
reading the
And
book.
where
Right,
does
but
English come from?
it's,
English comes from the English people. Like English doesn't come from another people.
You can't migrate
Why?
a Muslim into Australia who believes in Sharia law and give them democratic vote and expect them to not vote according to their traditional culture.
Now
Like,
you're
in
getting
a
to the point I was
democracy,
getting
when
to.
you migrate people and you give them a democratic, you introduce them in a democracy, you give them a vote, they become individual in our culture, because that's what we do. We value people as individuals. But if they have a traditional culture that doesn't respect Western values, as a Christian people are going to vote for Christian values. If you immigrate atheists or Muslims, they're going to vote for Muslim values or atheist values. There's a clear distinction. There's
the heart of it.
more aspects to the whole thing. When you're talking about a democracy, you can't just say, "Oh, this is the way it is." Well, no. If we migrate Christians, if we migrate Muslims, we're going to see people voting according to their traditional culture and our traditional heritage. Like, it's a fact. I will not change my vote is influenced by my Christian culture and my Christian heritage.
You've nailed it. That's the center of culture. If you work through all the contributing factors that make a culture, at the center, at the very heart of every culture on this planet are its spiritual beliefs. And if you try to import beliefs that are inconsistent with the spiritual beliefs that are already there, it degrades. So you're exactly right. So again, it's not a color issue and it's not an immigration issue, it's a cultural issue. You can bring in white people. I'll give you an example. Color's got nothing to do with it. Tony Jones, ABC, Tony Jones, in my opinion, trash. I wouldn't import another Tony Jones at all. We don't need any more like him. I don't like the guy. I don't like the way he thinks. I don't like what he does. I've got some great friends. They're Ghanaians. They're Ghanaians. They're Christians. Brilliant. It's not a color issue. It's a culture issue. And at the center of culture is religion. It's as simple as that. So
that's not true. Like, so this color, it's a misdirection. What we're talking about here is blood. What we're talking about here is genes. What we're talking about is people who've descended from people who are like us for centuries. And this country, Australia, was federated.
Okay, got it. Yeah, okay.
No.
Okay.
So this country was federated to.
Well, we're talking about two different things.
Now I understand the direction of the discussion.
Dusty. Australia was federated to be a homeland for the white British subjects in Australia. That was the whole reason that we became a country. What we've had since World War II, we've had mass immigration, and we were never asked about any of that.
Let's not have a debate now between Dave and Dusty on this, because Ricardo is the featured panelist at this time. We have got a couple of super chats. One from Senator Slayer for $2.99. Ricardo, what do we do with the small hats? I'm not sure.
Sorry, I don't even understand the question. What's that?
Oh, well, Dave, maybe you can, because I remember...
I've got no idea what they're talking about, Tim.
Well, I remember when we played the Australia One promo on the Uncuckables, Ricardo talked about Judeo-Christian heritage, and I recall that you took objection to it.
I was talking specifically about race and why Australia was founded. That's the question that I want to be answered.
Okay, how do you want to answer this, Ricardo?
But I also think it is important about the cultural side of it.
Dusty,
I'm
coming
from my angle.
Dusty, let Ricardo speak. Let Ricardo answer.
So I'm having a blonde moment. We're talking about race versus culture. So skin color versus what we believe. You can't change what you can't change. What you're born with, you're born with. And to analyze something for something they cannot change is just ignorant behavior.
It's who we are.
To you are, mate. To change to
what do you mean by that, Ricardo?
If you let me finish.
Please go.
You can't criticize someone for something they cannot change. You criticize somebody for something they can change and refuse to change. For example, if I think people with two nostrils are idiots, then I'm the idiot. But if I think someone who believes that you should beat up somebody because they believe a particular religion that doesn't harm you, for example,
okay, but I'm not talking about.
There are religions that harm you.
Ricardo, I'm not talking about criticizing anybody or beating up anybody. What I'm talking about is being proud of who you are, and being proud of your own countrymen, being proud of your people.
Listen, mate, look, my background's Italian, but I hear the school of a Scottish bagpipe and march the British Grenadiers. My God, I'm 2 inches taller and my back's ramrod straight. Seriously. I shouldn't be here according to your theory. Give me a break.
Can I ask a question in terms of future immigration? Because at the moment we're getting a lot. We're getting, I think it's 200,000 plus people in a year. Just to diffuse the argy-bargy going back and forward, and trying to find, if there is any common ground at all on the immigration issue. Do you believe that the numbers are too high? Would you advocate for drastically cutting all immigration? I'm obviously assuming you're not going to, from what you've been saying earlier, that you're not going to discriminate based on any ethnic traits. But would you agree that there has just been way too much immigration all around, which is giving rise to all of these people with separate cultures coming in? Because you really can't know what a person's thinks or believes until they're here, and once they're here, it's kind of too late.
Exactly right. There's two parts to this. The immigration debate. First of all, there's just the mechanics of it. Immigration should be stopped dead now because we haven't got the infrastructure. It's as simple as that. Just stop it. Now, if you want to bring people in because there are needs, then we have examples from overseas. Let's say you need 15 doctors that you can't replace it. Great. You bring them in. They're on a particular visa. You take care of every need they have, their housing, their health. The Australian people shouldn't pay for that. If you no longer need them, you send them home. I've been on exactly this sort of contract overseas when I was in the Middle East. I moved into the UAE. I was there 5 years. The company was required to pay my health insurance. It was required to provide housing. It was required. If I lost my job, I had 30 days to get out of the country. So that's how you do it, point number one. So only bring people in that you need to, and it shouldn't cost the Australian people 1 cent. Secondly, people that are here on that sort of a visa, if they have kids, those children are not Australian. It's called citizenship by descent, not citizenship by birth. Just like my daughters that were born over in the UAE, they weren't Emiratis. I got an Emirati birth certificate, but I had to take that birth certificate to the Australian Embassy, where they got an Australian citizenship certificate, and it was called citizenship by descent. I was Australian, therefore they were Australian. So these are really simple solutions. That's the technical, mechanical side. Wagga Base Hospital can handle 55,000 people. It's already handling 65, and the morons in the New South Wales Parliament want to bring another 10,000 people to Wagga. Well, how about we just give Wagga a break, build a better hospital, and then bring the people in? Now, that's the mechanical side. Now we've got the other side. This is an intentional strategy by the governments to destroy the country. Because as was previously said, we've got 200 million Muslims to the north. Let me give you a quick quiz here. What percentage of Indonesians want Sharia? Time up, 73%. So 7 out of 10 Indons are going to want Sharia. Let's bring some more Afghans in. How many Afghans want Sharia? Time's up, 10 out of 10. Now, you can't bring Islam in because Islam is not a religion. It's part religion and mostly world conquest ideology. That's how it works. That's their definition of it. Islam is, as you may have seen me describe, comprises two parts. Dar al-Islam, Dar al-Harb. Dar al-Islam is the realm of peace. Dar al-Harb is the realm of war. They have a global requirement to turn the whole planet into...
the same for atheists, where they are 80 or 70% voting left-wing? When they become
atheists, the rabid atheists are so small in this country so as to be politically irrelevant. The country is actually, they say Australia's not a Christian country. That's unmitigated horseshit. 51% are Christian, 77, 78% are people of faith. You've got a small packet of I'm not quite sure, and then you've got the rabid atheists. So yet they gob off as if this is a godless country. I'll tell you what, we've had 3 godless countries or civilizations. We had
Low
communism,
population
Nazism,
of
and
atheists
China,
and
and
Muslims
they've
are both
killed 100
extreme.
million people over the last 100 years. So well done, the atheists. You've killed 100 million people over the last 100 years. So, you know, I don't need to bat back the atheists. I'm not saying atheists aren't good, and I'm tired. I don't need to hear anything about atheists
Yeah,
being good
okay,
people, and I
Dusty.
don't.
Yeah, I've got a question for Ricardo now, because I feel
Shoot.
like I'm being a bit of a facilitator more than an active panelist. Now, obviously, with the 28 pedophile list, I'm skeptical of the validity of that list, but that's a separate debate. Certainly, well, there are pedophile sex trafficking rings that do go on in elite circles. We just had Ghislaine Maxwell arrested a couple of days ago. But this has got you the interest and support of some of the 99% Unite anti-lockdown activists, Fanos Panias here in Melbourne and Rafael Fernandez. They've done videos into their Facebook groups supporting you, and so you're getting some name recognition with them. And I'm sure you've seen footage of some of the anti-lockdown protests, which of course have been based here in Melbourne, given we are the most totalitarian state, and they are trying to reach out to you. Obviously, they've been labelled anti-vaxxers, 5G skeptics. I just want to get your opinion on them, what you've seen of them.
Sure. Just going back to the 28, that's not my claim. That was by Senator Bill Heffernan. It was a police document. It was a result of the Wood Royal Commission. So I don't have to justify it. Just look it up. It's there. Now, as far as the 99 group, I don't know much about them specifically, but I'm in alignment, I think, with what they believe. Let me give you some hard example. Yes, I've already stated that Comrade Dan's lockdown is entirely unconstitutional, and he's being backed up by every other globalist premier we've got. 5G, 2 problems with 5G. First of all, 5mm radiation and the 60 gigahertz frequency at which it's transmitted is deleterious to human health, all life, in fact. And I'll tell you a story. We knew about this back in the 80s because the Russians were using direct energy weapons like this already. They'd lease an office space or a room opposite the entrance to the US Embassy, let's say, in downtown Rome, and they shoot these directed energy weapons, which are basically microwave weapons, at them. And guess what the symptoms were? Oh my gosh, it's flu-like symptoms. Doesn't it sound like something that we're suffering today? So this is all old hat. The fact that it's just come out now is nothing new. 5G is bad for health. Secondly, it makes no sense as a business model, because if you're in the telecom game, you don't want to put up towers every 40, 60, 80 meters. You want them a long distance apart, because that's an investment in infrastructure you don't want to have to foot the bill for. Yet this is so appalling as a communications method, they have to put these towers up everywhere. So something stinks. So 5G is wrong. They got whipped up when we were all locked down. Now, goodness me, what a surprise that is. I'm not the least bit suspicious. Let's talk about, what was the other one you wanted to speak about? Vaccinations. No vaccination anytime ever has undergone double-blind testing. And I'm sure you've got an intelligent audience that understands what double-blind testing is. Not one ever. And in the US, let's say a vaccination causes problems, they go to court and they have to pay. But guess who foots the bill? It's not the pharmaceutical companies. They get a free pass. The government pays for it. Next, on vaccinations. We've been told by the Lancet that we covered this already, that vaccinations don't cause autism. Well, it does. Dr. Buttar is Rashid Buttar is a former U.S. Army medical doctor who was a good surgeon and doctor in the army, until his own child suffered from autism as a result of a vaccination. He then discovered a way to reverse that problem. And so his child got autism, and he no longer has autism. He now has an entire practice based on reversing the effects of vaccinations. So nobody's against vaccinations. If you want to have a vaccination, go for your life. That's your right. But no government should be forcing you to take anything. And why the hell is Scott Morrison parroting this nonsense from well-known philanthropist and crook Bill Gates, who knows nothing about vaccinations but a lot about screwing people's lives over? You know, why are we listening to Bill Gates? Who the hell is Bill Gates, and why is Scott Morrison listening to him? Nobody elected Bill Gates king of the world. So there are a lot of things to worry about. So if the 99% people are worried about those things, then so am I. So we're in alignment, but it's just not them. Every time I get a chance to explain this to people on a one-on-one or in small groups, they are shocked, horrified, hate me, until they actually go look it up and they find out that it's all true. And that's why the major parties, getting back to your first question, hate me, because I'm revealing the truth. Their con game is being revealed step by step by step.
And we have got another super chat, which segues into the latest results. Naughty Designer sent through $5 Australian. Thank you. There's no voting out of this. I'm not sure if they're referring to, because it seems that the vote results are frozen at the moment. But I'll just read out what Lucas Roses, one of our Unshackled contributors, has said on Parler. His analysis here is, I'll just bring it up here. Looks like the ALP will hold Eden-Monaro. Greens down to 3.6 on an election held just over a year ago is nice, though. Shooters saved Elbow with their preferences. The Greens are getting smashed, despite this being a bushfire hit area, and the media is bitching about climate change endlessly. Primary swing against ALP due to the loss of Kelly's significant personal vote, but is not enough to get the Libs over the line, with Shooters, Fishers, Farmers stabbing them in the back.
Oi, I'm out of here, guys. I'll bloody catch us later, eh? Thanks for having me on, Bart.
Cheerio, Dusty.
All right, see you, Dusty.
Oh, your political party sounds all right. I'll have to follow it, eh? You sound like you're onto it for the most part.
Thanks, mate.
Cheers, mate. Have a good one, eh?
You too.
So if we have a look at the two-party preferred, Kirsty McBain still on 50.75 and Fiona Kotvos 49.25. In regards to your vote, Ricardo, 295 votes, 0.64. That's pretty a decent start for a field of independents. You have beat Glenn's mob, the Australian Federation Party, on 0.25%, 114 votes.
Yeah, as I said, we were. I was interested that it's frozen, and I'm suspicious, but we were working the numbers, the brutal mathematics of an election, and I was waiting to see that the preferences start to flow, because, as you know, they take the bottom party off, and then distribute the preferences, and then take the next party off and distribute the preferences. There's a chance, if they take it to its final conclusion, that I might have got maybe 6th or 7th if I could leapfrog Dean McRae and pick up his preferences, because Dean McRae and I got a lot of respect for the guy. LDP, great people. We're very close, and with his preferences, he's certainly going to get ours, because we put him number 2. So that's going to help him leapfrog, and I'd be more than happy to see LDP and Dean McRae get up. But that would have been interesting to see the flow all the way through. But once again, AEC freezing the vote count. I'm not surprised. The AEC needs to be cleaned out from top to bottom. I'm not suggesting anybody in particular is a crook, but there is sufficient evidence to suggest that a clean out is required. The electoral roll is so corrupted; it's a farce. Again, this is the result from Dr. Amy McGrath's work, and the claims from many reputable sources, Bob Bottom, other investigative journalists. The election is a joke. The electoral roll is a joke. The systems we employ are suspect. The staff at the ANC are under-briefed, under-trained, and uninterested. And we've had our scrutineers report on this election, the previous election. So the AEC needs a thorough going through. So we'll see how we go.
Now, one point potentially to add, I don't know how relevant it is, but our friend here, who remained anonymous, has just come back from scrutineering. He says there was a handful of young Liberals, but almost all young Labor. I don't know if that's relevant or not, but might be an interesting point.
It says in the waiting room here that Dougal is waiting, but you're Dougal, so I don't know what's going on.
Sorry, say that one more time. I just had the same guy at the back saying that the counters people counting the votes for Young Labor. But do you want to repeat the question?
Oh no, I was saying that there's a person in the waiting room whose name is Dougal, but you're Dougal here.
It could be me on Joel's. Yeah, Joel's got my phone right now.
Okay, so let him in.
You can let him in if you like. I don't know if Joel wants to come in. Now, I'm time conscious for Ricardo. There's a lot of people waiting for him upstairs. I don't know what you want to do, Rick.
I think I've dominated the airwaves enough for tonight. But thank you very much for having me on. It's much appreciated.
Yep.
And anytime you want me on again, I'm more than happy to play. Thank you.
Thank you so much for providing us your time. I know how busy and stressful it can be running a campaign. So yeah, we'll release you now and let you get back to your get together, as Dougal said.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
All the best.
Thanks. It's been, I think, you know, the argy-bargy that you guys were having, David, is, it's just encouraging to know that his at the end of the day, even though you guys, you know, he's never going to, you know, come on board with the fact that that race is important.
It gave me
he's going to at least he's on board with stop all immigration, and as long as he's got stop all immigration, we can work around those kind of things.
Absolutely, it's the most based of the politicians that we've got out there at the moment. So,
he's also, you know, I've been on air a few times with Dean McRae himself, and you know, it's good that those two guys are getting together because, you know, although Dean is in the sort of Liberal Democrat Party, he's you know, he's not the airy-fairy type of libertarian. He's somebody who may have been us a year ago, you know. So yeah, and the fact that those two guys are working through issues that I've been myself talking to Dean with is also encouraging.
I've messaged Dean to see if he can come on tonight. I'm not sure if you can poke him as well, but it'd be good to have, I'll
give him a little poke now.
A trio of parties. Dave, I had this bright idea that because Ricardo, he gave it quite back to you on the race issue. So we were talking off air about blood sport debates. Imagine Adam Piggott and Ricardo Bossi debating what is an Australian.
I would love to see that. I think some blood sports would be very, very good.
Because, Ricardo doesn't hold back, and as we saw, Adam doesn't hold back either.
Yeah, I think that one could be a goer.
Now, I've got another person in the waiting room as well. We'll see if they can join us in a moment, but... What do you think of Lucas's analysis? It looks like Labor's going to hold on, but the vote is frozen.
I don't really care. There's no democratic solution to
it. Glenn has been quietly listening in the background. Do you want to offer some thoughts?
Look, it would be wonderful to comment positively on the things that Ricardo's talking about, where it comes to the challenges with electoral commissions, the challenges with what's really going on behind the scenes, the details with regards to the pedophile rings and things that he's talking about. There is an enormous amount of truth in everything that he's talking about. There definitely needs to be someone like Ricardo who approaches these things from a very military perspective. And I don't think it's necessary for there to be more than one. But I see with what he's going to do with A1, which we totally support, and where we're going to focus on trying to unite a broader section of the people in the electorates, the local communities, to educate them and let them realise that there is more to politics and everything else, and give them a voice, give them power back in their votes. That it's going to be a combination of parties like ourselves, A1, and a few others that are out there. That once we start all working together for the same goal, and that is to break the back of the two-party system, and ultimately once we start breaking that system, is unwinding some of the totally non-democratic voting systems and preferential systems around the country, we can start taking back Australia for the people.
Tim, have you got Dean's messenger? Because he's available if you want to just send him the link.
Yeah, I just did.
Cool.
So, Glenn, would you consider working with Ricardo Bossi's party, with Australia One?
Absolutely. Ricardo and I already talked behind the scenes, and we definitely will be working with regards to Ricardo. And because at the moment where the cross-section of the Australian people are, there's a growing understanding and need to fight the major parties and the, let's say the globalists, but I'm using the word foreign, our party's perspective.
Absolutely.
There's there are different groups that all agree but want to approach it differently, or have different underlying ideologies and things, and that's why it's important that there are a number of us that work shoulder to shoulder behind the scenes with the goal of taking away the ability for Labor or Liberal parties to hold a majority government ever again in this country within the next 3 to 5 years, and that a combination or a coalition of parties like A1, Australian Conservatives, and I won't name the others at the moment because I don't want to speak on behalf of them, that together we hold the balance of power and focus on what the input is from the grassroots and what the interests and needs and things are for the people of Australia, and that we all focus on rebuilding manufacturing, rebuilding Australia's sovereignty, and start pushing back, reversing lots of foreign ownership of Australian essential infrastructure, things like reverting Turnbull's disgusting legislation of separating water from the land and allowing our water to be traded on international markets, regardless of the impact on Australia. Because if we go back to rebuilding Australia after World War II, key elements were cheap electricity, cheap water, or access to water, and the steel. And so the Iron Boomerang project provides the steel, sorting out our water issues, getting rid of the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, reuniting the irrigators across the nation that the governments at the moment have turned against each other in this whole divide and conquer, and seeing a unified irrigation system right from the top of Queensland right down to Goolwa, across the eastern side of things, and throwing out the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, throwing out the Murray-Darling Basin Plan, probably completely reinventing the water authorities in Queensland, New South Wales, ACT, Victoria and South Australia, so that we can pursue projects like a modified Bradfield that not only deals with the inland Queensland, but also with the turning back of some of the northern New South Wales rivers, and really properly providing water right down through the whole systems. Because the one thing that everyone forgets is that the majority of farmers are the best environmentalists of protecting not only their land but also the rivers and everything, because they've always.
Yes, that's true. So so and you combine good water policy with liquid fluorine fluoride reactors, and you've got the potential to turn the inside of Australia green. So back to the original question. So you're considering working with them as a coalition rather than sort of all merging into one super party on the right to sort of pull the Liberal Party across to the right, the way that the Greens have pulled the Labor Party across to the left?
Look, nothing is impossible as we all move forward. We've got to deal with things on the basis of where the people are at the moment, and the people are still very naive and still operate very much in their brainwashed and misdirected lack of education, because it was stripped out of the education of how the voting system really works. So at the moment, there is definitely a need for a few different groups focusing on different elements of the general population. What is interesting is how badly the
working on the right is a little bit like herding cats.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that's why we need the right working together. But the other challenge that a lot of people forget is that the word conservative has been pushed into an ideology, whereas conservatism is actually the way that you approach a decision. researched, well thought out, and in the best interests of the people that a decision is being made. And when you really,
well, yeah, you're talking about sort of common sense and the scientific approach.
That is correct.
Yeah, as we all know, the problem with conservatives is that they haven't actually
conserved anything.
Yeah. That's where you're going. With
yeah, we have got another panelist who's they're on the call, but they haven't got video. They've switched their mic off now, but they can certainly hear us. Damien Ferry, senior editor of the Unshackled, who's it's been with the Unshackled since the beginning, like myself. Damien, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Tim.
So you're here with David Hiscox from the XYZ, climate denier Stephen Wells, and Glenn O'Rourke from the Australian Federation Party.
Hey, Damien.
Cool. Hey, how you doing?
Right.
Thanks.
Now, Damien, you live in Wollongong, which is without giving away, your home address, what federal electorate are you in, and how far is it from Eden-Monaro?
I'm in the electorate of Cunningham. Cunningham to Eden-Monaro would be about a 2.5 hours drive from my electorate to Queen Bian, which would be the northern part of the electorate. So about a 2.5 hour drive. It is an area that I know pretty well because I go there quite a fair bit for holidays and whatnot. So I know the areas fairly well. And it's just interesting to see how everything's played out tonight. And it's something that doesn't surprise me, really. I did think that we would be in a situation where it would be pretty close, and that even maybe the Liberals might be able to steal one, which a lot of people weren't expecting, just judging by recent events and what has been happening on the national scene. So definitely something interesting to watch, yeah.
I'll go to, because there has been a few more booths counted, but nothing's really changed. Well, the two-party preferred hasn't changed, but now 76 of the 86 polling places are returned, but not really much change in the votes that we announced before. So still Liberals on 37% primary, Nationals just below 6%, Hemp Party 2.6%, Shoes, Visions and Farmies 5.78%. We have the Greens on 5.79, and we have the Labor Party on 36.85. So, but it looks like, as I said, Lucas's prediction before he's pretty spot on with these sorts of analysis, that two-party preferred is going to stick. So that means that, the precedent continues that no government has won a seat off the opposition in a by-election in over 100 years. So it's good news for Albo. Scott Morrison, he downplayed expectations. He wasn't keen to build them up like Malcolm Turnbull did during the Super Saturday by-elections in the last Parliament. So pretty much the status quo. Kirsty McBain replaces Mike Kelly as the Labor member there, and the seat has its first female representative as well.
Tim, may I make a little a comment? As much as I, like many, would have loved to have seen a different outcome, what's exciting about Christie winning is, as the mayor of Bega in March this year, she wrote an actual letter of support for the Eden to Canberra rail and beyond to the inland rail interconnect. And the exciting thing there is that she, during the campaign, again reiterated her support for it in one of the Zoom forums. And even Albo, when questioned because of the media releases that the Federation Party put round on the ABC, said that he supported the project on the basis of proving a feasibility. So what that means is that we're able to continue beyond this by-election and fight to see the current federal government put some money out of the forward 72 billion they're bringing for infrastructure, and continue to fight to see the Eden to Canberra rail project go ahead, we'll definitely include it in the ACT elections coming up, and with some of the things that we're looking at hopefully rolling out with regards to the Northern Territory election, where we have candidates running at the moment under the party's banner and supporting the Iron Boomerang project, we'll again be able to continue to lift up the Eden to Canberra rail project and not let it die after this by-election. And we as a party are committed to that rail project because it's probably one of the most important Eastern Seaboard infrastructure projects, not only for that region, but for the middle part of inland Australia. So that's an exciting part of the bad news.
What do you reckon the odds are that if Labor decide to build it, it will be funded and owned by China?
Look, there is an absolute fight that cannot happen. And we've got some other things and other relationships that we're building that would commit to that. But the other thing is important is if the federal government does commit significant funds out of the infrastructure investments, that wouldn't be a case. But I think it's really important that we don't allow major infrastructure to be owned by any foreign country, let alone China. And there needs to be a rollback across our essential water, electricity, even some of our essential issues like gas. When I was the office manager for Independent Anne Bressington in the South Australian Parliament, going back a few years, just before the Bundaberg gas export facility was being opened, the Labor Party in the South Australian government was putting through really a taximeter legislation on the gas pipes out of South Australia, so that every kilojoule of gas that was heading overseas, that they'd get a click on their meter and tax it. Now, as part of that, I was recommending, and we tried to fight very much for a gas reservation policy for South Australia, because speaking to the key industry people, instantly that the gas reservation policy wasn't put in, and this new tax went on, and of course the proposals of the gas price, because the export gas price was being linked to, which was then coming back into Australia, the Japanese price for gas. And of course, that was very, very high, nearly double the price here. And so that was going to add about $2,500 to the cost of the average home immediately. A lot of manufacturing industries were having their gas doubled, and so the costs of manufacturing. So the impact of the inaction of gas reservation policies, and people don't realise that all gas exporters are majoritarily foreign owned. So all our gas is owned by foreigners as well. So there's so many things that need to be reinvestigated and re-legislated to ensure that the essential infrastructure, essential minerals, and things like that come back into at least majority-owned Australian. And you know, I have a personal belief, and it's not formal policy of the party, that all this foreign ownership of land needs to be switched back into leasehold, and however that's achieved, you know, I've got some ideas, but they're mine, so I won't expand on them. But we need to see Australia become Australian again. Quiet.
Damien, how familiar are you with these local issues? And obviously the mainstream media has been focusing on the bushfires and the drought and the Murray-Darling Basin plan, given that that's the area that's screwed over most by the plan, and that's why the shooters do so well there. I remember I was keeping in touch with you during the bushfires to see if you were being affected there.
Yeah, I definitely was affected when the bushfires were happening, because I was down there at the time, and we were actually really lucky at one stage, because we went down to Eden on one day, and we're on the way up, and we got shut down the day after. That's when it got really bad down at Eden. So in that area, it was really, I mean, we went to Jindabyne as well, and that was really smoky at the time, really stunk terribly. So we did get affected, and all the way up to Canberra as well, and it didn't clear up until really we got more towards where we live, down towards the Illawarra and the Southern Highlands. So it was a pretty bad situation. In reference to other local issues down there, I actually know a fair bit and have looked into the rail project that's been proposed. And I actually did a little bit of activist work myself when I was down there last, because it's something that would affect me, because it's an area that I'm actually looking to move down to into the future. And what was been happening was there was a put forward to local council that they actually wanted to build a rail trail there. And then the New South Wales government then came out and said that they would prefer to put the rail link back from Canberra and extend it to Eden. But there was a bit of work that I went and done during the time I was there, and I ended up putting some posters up in all the different areas down in the Snowy Mountains region, in all the different boundary towns that the rail, either the rail trail or the rail link would be going through, and talked to a few people there. And I actually also wrote to the mayor at the time, and the mayor at the time was very supportive of the rail link rather than the rail trail. But then they had a switch in mayor in the council down there, in the Cooma Council, and the new mayor didn't get back to me when I wrote to him. So I'm not sure what the current stance on council is, but there are a few people down there that are really pushing a rail trail instead. And the reason mainly is because they think they'll benefit business-wise. I know there's one guy down there, he owns a farm and accommodation stay, and he thinks that bike riders that go down there are going to end up staying in his town, and he's going to financially benefit from it. He owns a small business down in a village as well. So there is a few people that are really pushing that idea, but I'm hoping that it doesn't go ahead, and that we do end up getting the rail link back and having it extended to Eden. Yeah.
Yeah, look, Damien, just quickly, let you know, if you go to Eden, New South Wales, and I think it's .org.au, but it may be the .com.au, but the whole proposal for the Eden to Canberra rail incorporates the proposed rail trails, because the rail people are very aware that it cannot be an either or, and so even in their costings, they have included the rail trail, and they're quite detailed documents and information on the Eden-Monaro Progress Association website under the projects, and all the documents, the coloured, the glossy documents, are all available for reading on there, and they include the rail trail. So if the rail goes ahead, and I would like to say when the rail goes ahead, it will incorporate the rail trails to get the outcomes for those tourist operators that are supporting it for that reason.
Well, that's really interesting that you say that, because there was one stage when I was really involved in doing research, and it seemed like a lot of the people that were supporting the rail trail were actually saying, oh, look, we want it on the tracks, we don't want it on the side of the tracks, and they were really having a bit of a complaint about that. So if it is the case that they do go ahead with both, and that the trains can go back and they can put the rail trail on alongside, then that wouldn't be an issue at all. And I think it's something that will make everyone happy. I'm actually not sure why it is that they were really pushing it for it on the tracks. And I mean, it would really destroy the whole heritage of the area, because I'm really into the heritage scene down there and the beautiful villages, and I would love to see trains going down there again. It would be beautiful. And I mean, one thing that I don't understand, and this is something that I actually put forth when I was talking to people, is how many people are going to be using it on their bikes, like as an actual rail trail? Because when you actually look at this area, I've seen rail trails that have worked, and the only reason why they have worked is because they're really small in distance, and they tend to be something that you could walk from one side to the other. It could be like a kilometre, a couple of kilometres long. But this one here, each of the towns are like 30 k's apart. I mean, it's not going to be easy for people to be going on bike and driving that great a distance. And how many people would be doing it per se that they would be going either throughout the village on bike. I just don't really see it as something that many people would do because of the great distance, unless you're really like a professional bike rider, really fit. You're not going to be riding that kind of distance. And I mean, this is something that they could have even put a bike track on the side of the road or something, and people could have went down on it. I mean, it's not something that they had to spend the millions of dollars for actually putting down their paths and doing this. It's just something that you wouldn't really financially get any gain from it, and I don't think many people would actually use it anyway.
And lycra-clad individuals are all a bunch of wankers anyway. So
run the jolly buses over.
Yeah, so they have difficulty getting their hand on it too because the lycra's so tight.
Yeah, Tim, we've just gone past 10. I reckon we're just about done.
Yeah, we were trying to get Dean McRae on, but I sent him the Zoom link, but he kept saying that computer says no, it won't let him.
Yeah, he's only got his mobile phone because he's out. He's staying like away from home.
Yeah, I'm getting the impression that he's quite boomer tech. To use that expression.
Well, yeah, me and him have had a lot of fun trying to do a show together when neither of us can work at a bloody computer. Yeah, it's been
I know that you both have female assistants who do it all for you.
Yeah, pretty much. That's the way the world should work. Have a female assistant do everything for you.
Behind every great YouTuber is a good woman. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Look, can I just quickly very quick word to Damien's about rail trails down in Gippsland, the southern Gippsland in Victoria. There was a big push to reintroduce the Cranbourne right through to one of the ports down, which went right through Leongatha and right through the Gippsland, South Gippsland area. And the whole environmental push of these rail trails, they put hundreds of kilometres of dirt rail trails and ripped up all the rails rather than put the rail back in. But the realities are that there's this historic thought of, my gosh, putting the trains back in is adding pollution and all this, but especially in Eden, Canberra, with the logging, you're instantly going to be able to put the logs on the trains and remove all those logging trucks. So there's immediately an environmental benefit for that. So
a much better reason to have trains going through places like that where lots of greenies are is that you can put them in cattle carts and you can take them off somewhere and dispose them.
Yeah, that's the smartest thing I've heard for the last 2 hours, Stephen. What do you say we wrap this up, Tim?
Yeah, I just suggested the Adam Ricardo debate on Australian identity. Maybe there needs to be a separate show for Glenn and Damien to talk about rail transport. They seem to be quite interested in it. Now, Saturday, 4th of July.
God, train spotting.
Saturday, 4th of July is not just the date of the Eden-Monaro by-election, but is also Independence Day in the United States. On the eve, I heard the speech this afternoon. Trump from outside Mount Rushmore. That's the alcohol slurring. There, not saying it properly. He gave a speech defending America's history, culture, monuments. He said he wanted to cancel culture and called the Marxist far left fascist extremists. And you saw Dusty Bogan before. He had the US flag behind him for Independence Day. He was out, he and the Brisbane Proud Boys, putting the White Lives Matter banners in Brisbane. So I thought to play us out tonight, we might play his video compilation. And this, obviously I said at the beginning that this was on it is on the Unshackled YouTube channel, but you will be able to watch this as a live replay on the Uncuckables channel when we are able to upload again. So thank you, Dave, as always. I think we're pretty pooped after this week.
Yeah, it's been pretty intense.
So we're going to have a Sabbath Sunday tomorrow.
Yeah, it's well needed.
Thank you, Stephen, as always. Lovely to meet and chat with you, Glenn. Thank you to Dusty before. Thank you to Ricardo, Dougal Cameron, Joel Jamal, and thank you to Matty as well for coming on.
And Damien.
Oh, and Damien as well.
No worries.
I haven't had Damien on an Unshackled show for a while, so it's been good to for the audience to hear your voice again. I'll be back Monday for Wilmsfront, 6:30 p.m. Melbourne time on the Wilmsfront YouTube and D-Live channel for the Ultimate China Roundtable, which will feature me as the host, Dougal Cameron, Dave Lee, and also Marcus Phil as well. We're going to be discussing the Australia-China relationship and China's geopolitical ambition. It's a new type of format for Wilmsfront, so I'm very much looking forward to it. But that's it from us tonight, and I will play. I'll just mute everyone here so I can play Dusty's compilation. So happy 4th of July.
Going Dusty Bogan here. We got we're painting up another banner. Bit bigger this one. This is for the bridges for tomorrow. We got the small one we're taking in town, and we're gonna have a fucking good one. Cheers, eh? Pew! Celebrate the fucking America's birthday tomorrow. Yeah, bud, hook me up. Hook me up, you fucking bad dog. Cheers, eh? Ciao, brother.
Check this out, mate. Fucking you! Fuck yeah, all lives matter, mate. You! Fuck yeah, check that out. All lives matter, mate.